right now. Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, powered by FanDuel Sportsbook.
All right, thanks a lot, Ken, and thank you for tuning into the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, powered by FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm Rich Walsh, sitting right next to Andrew Fillipponi, and we're taking your phone calls tonight. 412-575-2600 is the number. And a few things that I want to talk about tonight. We're talking a little bit about the Steelers. The Pro Bowls this weekend. They got 4.
Oh, yippee. I can barely contain myself here.
That the Pro Bowl? Yeah, we got 4 Steelers in the Pro Bowl. All defensive players, that is. One guy they didn't make it was Bud Dupree, but, you know, we had an interview with T.J. Watt today talking about how he wants to do whatever he can. He wants the Steelers to do whatever they can to get Bud Dupree here. We could talk a little bit about that. I know you and I have addressed this before, that we think that he's probably going to end up on a franchise tag. But one thing that I want to get into, it was a tweet that you sent out a few days ago, and I'm 100% on board with you. I know Pomp isn't. But talking about
Pomp's killed me.
Talking about the Steelers should look into trying to trade Juju to see if you can get a first-round draft pick.
Right. There's a fine line here, Richie, between being a genius and being insane. And so since I've sent this tweet out, that's gone viral, by the way. Sometimes that happens. I've gotten both. I've gotten ridiculed by Pompiani. Look, the Bills need a number 1 wide receiver. The Patriots dynasty is waning. There's an opening there, maybe no Tom Brady. Are they going to go into 2020 with Cole Beasley and John Brown as their top receivers? Probably not. So I think there's an appetite on Buffalo's part. Remember, they traded for Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
And then AB
They were giving up a first-rounder for him, too.
AB said, I'm not going there. And so I think there's a demand and a need for a number 1 wide receiver. And I do not think there's any way the Steelers and Juju agree to a contract extension this summer. So that means Juju's going to go into his walk year. He's going to go into his final year under contract and bet on himself and then either get franchise tagged or leave in free agency.
Yeah, and right now, I mean, I do think, I understand that he is your number 1 receiver, but I do think that he's replaceable. I don't mind seeing Deontay Johnson and James Washington as your 1 and 2 guys right there, because I kind of think all 3 guys are interchangeable.
Well, they do a great job, the Steelers, of drafting wide receivers. Steelers pick wide receivers, I think, better than any franchise. They got rid of Santonio Holmes. They went to the Super Bowl the next year.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so they've got a history with that. And they love first-round picks. This is on, we're ready for possibly the first year without a first-round pick for the Steelers in, 52 years?
And I think I think Juju, I think that would be the perfect place. I don't think, I mean, he's not worth a high first rounder, but 22nd. Yeah, I think that's right where he would fall in.
And I think there's a team out there that would still covet him and would make excuses for why he struggled so much last year. We've heard Art Rooney and Mike Tomlin do that.
Yeah.
To some extent with Juju. The wide receiver market has exploded. I mean, Sammy Watkins is making $16 million a year. Brandon Cooks got $80 million from the Rams. If Juju went into free agency, he's still super young. He's going to be 24 years old. I think somebody would pay him $20 million a year.
You have to pay Bud Dupree, at least for 1 year. You got to pay T.J. Watt. He's going to be your guy that you're going to focus on. Where is the money coming from to pay Juju when Ben Roethlisberger is going to be making a ton of money next year? And you're right. You can go through the draft and maybe try to find someone to replace him.
Well, even if you had that money, would you want to give it to him?
Not right now, not what he did, because I'm not confident. Even when Ben was there for the first 2 games, Juju couldn't get open. Even with Mason Rudolph, there were times that you'd watch and you'd focus on him, and he couldn't get open.
Right.
Even though there might have been some type of double coverage or bracketing, but when it was one-on-one, he was still having problems getting open.
He didn't make the most of the opportunities. He fumbled the ball away against Baltimore.
2 straight years he's done that, lost games.
And not enough people bring this up, and I don't really know why, but even in Week 16, Hodges picks the ball up and makes a throw. Juju should catch that ball, and if he does, the Steelers probably win that game. I mean, that 4th down play was right there for him. He jumped up and it went through his hands. I mean, that's a catch he's got to make, and maybe the Steelers win.
Yeah, and you remember my famous 51-second interview with him, middle of the season, when he was just tough to deal with during that stretch.
Well, and I think he showed a different side of his personality. I think he looked like a different person this year. I think, the social media openness I think it actually, I think it got to him. I think it worked against him this year. I think the fans got to him.
And I agree with you. So, do you agree with Pony? Do you think that the Steelers maybe should look into trading Juju Schuster? It's a good question, and it's one that's on the table right now. Also, we'll be talking about Antonio Brown. There's a report out there by the USA Today that he is going to turn himself in. At least the Hollywood Police Department think he's going to turn himself in at some point, either tonight or tomorrow, but it hasn't happened as of right now. So if you want to talk about Brown, Juju, anything you want to talk about. Also, Pirates Fest starts tomorrow. I have a chance to interview Derek Shelton tomorrow. Pony has they did an interview with him today, and he said some interesting things to them. So we'll hear about that coming up after this break, so stay right there.
The Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call is brought to you by Ireland Contracting, celebrating 25 years as Pittsburgh's #1 home exterior expert in roofing, siding, windows, and gutters, where honesty and integrity still matter.